If you drive on I-95, or if you plan to drive on I-95 at any point in the coming days and weeks, what I'm about to tell you right now is not something you can afford to miss. Starting tomorrow, a comprehensive wave of new enforcement rules goes fully active along one of the busiest, most heavily trafficked highway corridors in the entire United States. And here is the part that is going to catch millions of drivers completely off guard, including experienced drivers who have been navigating this corridor for years and who believe they already know the rules. These are not warning tickets. There is no grace period built into the new enforcement framework. There is no officer pulling you over, having a brief conversation, and sending you on your way with a reminder to slow down. The fines are instant. They are automated in the majority of designated enforcement zones. And in many cases, they are being mailed directly to the registered owner of your vehicle before you have even made it home from the drive on which the violation occurred. I'm going to walk you through every single change, every new rule, every enforcement zone, every dollar amount you are risking, and exactly what you need to do before you get behind the wheel on this corridor tomorrow or any other day this week. Stay with me until the very end, because the single most misunderstood rule in this entire update, the one that has already generated the highest volume of violations in the pilot zones where this framework was tested over the past several months, is something I am going to cover in specific and practical detail. And once you fully understand it, you are going to realize that a very large percentage of the drivers currently on I-95 are unknowingly violating it on a daily basis, without any awareness that they are doing so. Before we go any further, do me a favor right now. If you drive on I-95 regularly, if you have any family members or friends who commute on this corridor, if you know anyone in any of the 15 states this highway passes through, share this video before you watch another second of it. Not at the end of the video, right now. Because the fine cycle on several of these new enforcement provisions begins at midnight tonight in certain jurisdictions, and every driver who does not know what changed is going to find out the hard way in the form of a violation notice arriving in their mailbox. One share takes 3 seconds. It could save someone $300 or more on a single violation. Share it now, then come back, and we are going to go through every single detail of what is changing tomorrow. Let me start with the background, because understanding why this is happening and why the enforcement approach is so fundamentally different from anything most American drivers have experienced before is essential context for understanding the specific rules and why they are going to be enforced the way they are. I-95 runs 1,926 miles from the Canadian border near Houlton, Maine, through the entire eastern seaboard, all the way to Miami, Florida. It passes through 15 states and the District of Columbia. It carries an estimated 300,000 vehicles per day through certain segments of the corridor, and in densely populated stretches through metropolitan areas including Boston, Providence, New York City, Newark, Philadelphia, Wilmington, Baltimore, Washington, D.C., Richmond, and Miami. That daily volume is substantially higher during peak travel periods. By any measure, I-95 is the most important and most heavily used highway in the United States. It is also, by the data, one of the most dangerous. According to federal highway safety data compiled through 2025, I-95 consistently ranks among the top 3 most dangerous highway corridors in the country when measured by the rate of fatal crashes per mile of roadway. In the most recent 5-year period for which complete federal data is available, there were more than 14,000 injury crashes on I-95 and its direct connector segments, resulting in over 1,100 fatalities. Those are not statistics. Those are real people, real families, real tragedies that occur on this road every single week. The federal government, working in active coordination with the 15 state departments of transportation that share jurisdiction over this corridor, spent the past 2 years developing and piloting a comprehensive new enforcement framework specifically designed for I-95. That framework goes into full nationwide implementation tomorrow. And the approach is fundamentally different from the traditional enforcement model most American drivers have spent decades adapting their driving behavior around. The traditional enforcement model works like this. A state trooper or highway patrol officer visually observes a traffic violation, pursues the vehicle, initiates a traffic stop, exercises judgment about the severity of the violation and the driver's circumstances, and issues a citation or a warning at their discretion. That model involves human decision-making, requires significant officer time, and statistically results in enforcement of only a small fraction of the actual violations occurring on any given stretch of highway at any given moment. Most drivers know this intuitively and have calibrated their behavior accordingly. The new framework replaces a significant portion of that human interaction model with automated enforcement infrastructure. Overhead gantry-mounted radar arrays, license plate recognition cameras, proximity and distance sensors, occupancy detection systems, and a centralized processing platform that identifies violations, matches them to registered vehicle owners through state DMV database cross-referencing, and generates violation notices automatically. No traffic stop, no conversation with an officer, no opportunity to explain your circumstances in the moment. The fine is generated, and it is in the postal mail stream before you reach the next exit. Every driver who gets on I-95 tomorrow morning needs to understand that the enforcement environment they are entering is categorically different from the one they drove through last week. There are 7 specific changes going into effect tomorrow, and I am going to take you through each one with enough concrete detail for you to understand exactly what it means for your driving behavior and for your wallet. The first change is the expansion of active speed enforcement zones using permanently installed overhead gantry-mounted radar and laser speed measurement arrays. Previously, automated speed cameras on I-95 were largely confined to designated work zones, where construction workers were actively present and where the safety justification for camera enforcement was most clearly established. Under the new framework, active speed enforcement infrastructure has been permanently installed and activated at 47 additional locations along the corridor, including segments with no active construction activity whatsoever, based solely on the statistical analysis of crash data showing those segments to have elevated injury and fatality rates. The enforcement threshold has been tightened from what drivers may have come to expect. Where the standard practice in most states previously allowed some informal tolerance of speed in excess of the posted limit before a stop was initiated, the new automated system enforcement threshold in standard zones along the corridor is 6 miles per hour over the posted limit. In what the framework designates as high-density traffic areas, which includes any segment of I-95 within 10 miles of a major metropolitan interchange, that threshold is reduced to 3 miles per hour over the posted limit. 3 miles per hour. On a segment posted at 65, that means any speed above 68 miles per hour in a standard zone, and any speed above 68 miles per hour in standard zones, or above 68 in standard and 68 in high density, generates a recordable violation. The fines are structured on an escalating scale. A first automated speed violation in a standard enforcement zone starts at $75. In a high-density traffic area, the starting fine is $125. Repeat violations within a rolling 12-month period escalate to $250 for the second violation and $400 for a third, with the possibility of points being added to your driving record depending on the state where the violation was recorded. There are 15 states on this corridor, and the point systems and license implications vary, but the fines are consistent across the federal framework being implemented. The second change is the one I told you at the top of this video, has already generated the highest volume of violations in the pilot testing zones, and it is the one that most drivers, including experienced, careful drivers, have absolutely no awareness of. This is the activation of minimum speed enforcement in designated corridor segments. Every major American highway has a posted minimum speed as well as a posted maximum speed. On most segments of I-95, the minimum posted speed in through travel lanes is 45 miles per hour. Traveling consistently below that minimum in an active through travel lane is not just inadvisable, it is illegal, and it is substantially more dangerous from a traffic dynamics perspective than moderate speeding, because a slow-moving vehicle in a lane where surrounding traffic is moving at 65 or 70 creates a dangerous speed differential that is directly associated with rear-end collision chains and emergency braking situations. New automated sensors that are capable of detecting vehicles traveling below the minimum posted speed threshold are now active in designated corridor segments. These sensors use a combination of radar measurement, inductive loop detection, and overhead camera systems to identify vehicles maintaining speeds below the minimum threshold in active travel lanes. If your vehicle is traveling at 35 or 40 miles per hour in a through lane on a segment where the posted minimum is 45, the system records your plate and generates a violation notice. The fine for a first minimum speed violation starts at $50 and escalates for repeat violations within a 12-month period. It is critically important to understand what this provision does and does not cover. It does not apply to vehicles that have pulled fully onto the right shoulder in an emergency. It does not apply in confirmed congestion events where the overall traffic flow has slowed below the minimum due to volume. It applies specifically to vehicles traveling continuously below the minimum speed in active travel lanes during periods when surrounding traffic is flowing normally. The scenario most commonly flagged in the pilot testing was drivers in the right lane traveling well below the minimum while searching for their exit, navigating with an unfamiliar GPS, or simply driving more cautiously than surrounding traffic conditions warrant. If you are on I-95 and the traffic around you is moving normally at 65, and you are in the right lane at 40 or 42 looking for your exit, you are in violation under this new framework. The solution is straightforward. In advance of your planned exit, know your exit number. Know approximately how far away it is. Maintain appropriate speed in the through lane and use the right lane as a lane for maintaining consistent traffic flow, not as a slow lane for uncertain navigation. The third change is the implementation of mandatory minimum following distance enforcement in designated high-density corridor segments. And this is where I want you to pay very careful attention because the technology being deployed to enforce this is genuinely new, and the following distance that the new standard requires is substantially greater than what most American drivers currently maintain on an interstate highway. Overhead sensor arrays, using a combination of radar, LiDAR, and infrared measurement technology, are now capable of calculating in real time the distance between consecutive vehicles traveling in the same lane, and translating that distance into a time gap based on current speed. In designated high-density corridor segments, which are defined as segments within 15 miles of a major urban interchange, where average traffic density exceeds a defined threshold, maintaining a following gap of less than 2 full seconds behind the vehicle ahead of you in the same lane is a recordable violation if that gap is sustained for more than 4 consecutive seconds. 2 seconds of following gap sounds like an easy standard to meet. It is not what most American highway drivers currently maintain in congested or semi-congested conditions. At 60 miles per hour, 2 seconds of following distance means your front bumper is approximately 176 feet behind the rear bumper of the vehicle ahead. That is more than half a standard football field of empty space between you and the next car. In dense highway traffic, most drivers maintain a fraction of that distance. Traffic culture on major American interstates, including I-95, has normalized following gaps of 1 second or less in many conditions, particularly in the metropolitan segments of the corridor through New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut. The pilot testing data from the initial 6-month deployment showed that automated following distance violations were being generated at a rate that surprised even the enforcement framework designers, because the gap between what drivers believed was safe following distance and what the 2-second standard requires is so much larger than most people expect. The fine for a first following distance violation under the new framework is $100. A subsequent violation within a 12-month period is $200. In states that additionally assess surcharges on top of base fines, the actual out-of-pocket cost per violation can be significantly higher. The solution is simple to state and requires genuine habit change to implement. Use the 2-second counting method. Pick a fixed point on the road ahead, a highway marker, an overpass, a road sign. When the rear bumper of the vehicle ahead of you passes that point, begin counting. 1,000, 1,000. Your front bumper should not pass that same fixed point before you finish the count. If it does, you are following too closely by the new enforcement standard. In high-density segments with the 2-second requirement, the technique is the same. The standard does not change based on surrounding traffic behavior. You are responsible for maintaining your own following distance, regardless of what the driver behind you is doing. The fourth change is the activation of distracted driving detection cameras at 23 interchange and ramp locations throughout the corridor. These are fixed camera installations using image recognition technology to detect handheld device usage by drivers as they approach and transit through designated interchange zones. The technology was piloted at 3 locations over the past 8 months. During that pilot period, it detected handheld device use in an average of 12.4% of vehicles captured during peak hours. That number, more than 1 in 10 vehicles with a driver actively using a handheld device, is consistent with research showing that distracted driving enforcement has historically been insufficient to change widespread behavior. The cameras at these 23 locations are not functioning interpretively. The system uses machine learning image recognition to flag cases where a driver appears to be holding a phone or device above the dashboard in a manner consistent with active use, talking, texting, or looking at the screen. Each flagged image is reviewed by a human reviewer before any notice is issued, which means the system includes a human check against obvious false positives, such as a driver eating or adjusting their visor. But the confirmation threshold is not high. If the image shows you with a device in your hand in a way that reasonably suggests you are using it while driving, the violation will be confirmed and the notice will be issued. The fine for a first distracted driving violation recorded at these fixed camera locations starts at $150 in most corridor states. In states including New York and New Jersey, which have enacted enhanced distracted driving penalty structures, the base fine for a first offense can be as high as $450, with surcharges and insurance consequences that can far exceed the fine itself. The practical guidance here could not be more straightforward. Your phone goes in your center console, your cup holder, your passenger seat, or your bag before you enter the corridor, not in your hand, not resting on your leg where you might reach for it at a signal, not propped against the steering wheel. If you need navigation, your phone is mounted in a cradle on your dashboard or windshield, and you are not touching it while the vehicle is in motion. If a call comes in, you have Bluetooth, or you let it go to voicemail. There is no call, no text, no notification important enough to cost you $450, plus the insurance premium impact that a distracted driving citation triggers. The fifth change is the expansion of the high occupancy vehicle lane enforcement program using a combination of overhead license plate readers, occupancy detection sensors, and in some corridor segments, real-time video monitoring reviewed by enforcement personnel. This is relevant for every driver who uses the HOV or carpool lanes during the restricted hours when those lanes are limited to vehicles carrying 2 or more occupants. The new sensor infrastructure in the I-95 corridor deploys a combination of infrared imaging and machine learning occupancy estimation to flag vehicles traveling in restricted HOV lanes during enforcement hours that appear to have a single occupant. A flagged vehicle is either confirmed by a reviewing officer watching the live camera feed or is pulled over by a patrol unit responding to a real-time flag from the automated system. The fines for HOV lane violations vary by state along the corridor, reflecting the different penalty structures that the 15 corridor states have each established. In Florida, a first HOV violation carries a base fine of $65. In Virginia, it is $125. In Maryland, it is $90. In Delaware and New Jersey, base fines start at $75. In New York and Connecticut, base fines start at $150. These fines apply in addition to any points that may be assessed against the driver's license record in states that apply points to HOV violations. The combined financial and license impact of a single HOV violation, including the base fine, any applicable surcharges, and the insurance premium increase that typically follows a moving violation on your record, can easily reach several $100s for a single occurrence. The sixth change involves commercial vehicle and truck enforcement. And while this provision is most directly relevant for commercial drivers and fleet operators, it matters to every driver on the corridor because it directly and immediately affects traffic flow and safety conditions. New weight in motion sensor systems have been installed in the travel lanes at 31 designated locations along the corridor. These sensors can measure the gross weight of a commercial vehicle while that vehicle is moving at normal highway speed, without requiring the commercial vehicle to exit the main travel lanes to a static weigh station. If a commercial vehicle passing over one of these sensor locations registers above the legal gross vehicle weight limit for the state in which the sensor is installed, an automated alert is transmitted to the nearest enforcement unit, and the vehicle is flagged for a mandatory pullover at the next available enforcement point. The fines for overweight commercial vehicle violations begin in the hundreds of dollars and escalate into the thousands depending on the severity of the overweight violation and the specific state's penalty structure. For non-commercial drivers, the relevance of this change is indirect but real. The previous model of commercial vehicle weight enforcement required trucks to periodically exit the main highway at weigh station locations, which created disruptions to traffic flow as large vehicles entered and exited the main roadway. The new in-motion measurement system processes commercial vehicle weight compliance without requiring any exit from the main travel lanes for routine checks, which means the traffic flow disruptions that previously accompanied commercial vehicle enforcement are significantly reduced. The roadway moves more smoothly for everyone when commercial enforcement is handled in lane rather than through mandatory exits. The seventh and final change going into effect tomorrow is the one I want every driver on this corridor to hear very carefully, because it applies to every single vehicle on I-95, regardless of type, speed, or driving history. And it is the provision most likely to generate a surprise violation notice for a driver who believed they were fully compliant with all applicable rules. Starting tomorrow, the registration hold enforcement protocol goes live across the entire I-95 corridor. Here is exactly what that means. The license plate recognition infrastructure that is now operating at every gantry point, every toll plaza, and every activated camera station along the full length of the corridor is doing something more comprehensive than simply recording speeds and measuring following distances. Every time your plate is captured by any camera in the network, the system performs a real-time database cross-reference against state motor vehicle registration records. That cross-reference checks whether your vehicle registration is current in the state where it is registered, whether your registration has any outstanding violations or holds attached to it, and in states that use electronic insurance verification systems, whether your current insurance status is confirmed in the state database. If any of these checks return a flag, the system generates an alert and a violation notice is created. The specific provision that is going to generate the largest volume of first-week violations under this protocol involves vehicles with registrations that have been expired for more than 30 days. In New York, New Jersey, Maryland, Virginia, and several other corridor states, vehicles with registrations expired for more than 30 days that are detected traveling on the interstate highway system are now subject to an automated violation notice that is separate from and in addition to any local or state citation that may already exist on record for the expired registration. The base fine for this automated interstate detection of an expired registration starts at $100 in most of the corridor states that have adopted this provision, with an administrative processing fee added on top of the base amount. This matters profoundly for drivers who have let their registration lapse and who have been driving locally without encountering enforcement, because local enforcement of expired registrations is inconsistent in most jurisdictions. A vehicle that has passed through dozens of local intersections and local roads without triggering any enforcement action over months of expired registration status is going to be identified by the I-95 automated system the moment it enters the corridor. No officer needed, no traffic stop, just a plate read, a database query, and a violation notice in the mail. If your registration has expired, renewing it before you drive on this corridor tomorrow is not optional. It is the only way to avoid a violation that the system will generate automatically. Now I want to spend time on what you should actually do with all of this information, because the purpose of everything I have covered is not to generate anxiety. It is to give you the specific and actionable steps that prevent you from being in the group of drivers who fund the transportation departments of 15 states with violation fines in the first weeks of this new enforcement regime. The first and most time-sensitive action is to check your vehicle registration right now. Before you close this video, before you go to bed tonight, open your glove box or check your state's DMV website and confirm your registration expiration date. If your registration is expired or will expire within the next 30 days, renewing it before your next trip on I-95 is your absolute highest priority action item. Vehicle registration renewal in every state along the I-95 corridor can be completed online through the state's official DMV website, in most cases in under 10 minutes. The fee for renewal is a small fraction of the $100 plus violation fine that the automated system will generate if you enter the corridor with an expired registration. Do not wait until you see a notice in your mailbox to address a registration issue you could have resolved tonight. The second action is to reassess your speed habits, specifically in relation to the new enforcement thresholds. Many drivers have developed highway speed habits that were calibrated around informal expectations about when a human officer would initiate a stop. 6 over in a standard zone and 3 over in a high-density zone are the new thresholds for automated enforcement. And these are thresholds that the system applies without any of the informal discretion that characterized human officer enforcement. If you routinely drive I-95 at 7, 8, or 9 miles per hour over the posted limit, that habit will generate violations in the new enforcement zones. The adjustment required is not dramatic in terms of vehicle speed. Maintaining 68 miles per hour instead of 72 on a 65 mile per hour segment is not a driving experience anyone would notice as meaningful. But the difference in violation exposure is 100%. Make the adjustment before tomorrow, not after the first notice arrives. The third action involves your following distance, and this one requires the most deliberate practice because it involves changing a habit that has been reinforced by years of driving in traffic conditions where maintaining large following gaps is practically difficult. The 2-second standard in designated high-density corridor segments is not negotiable with the automated system. Practice the 2-second counting method before you get on the corridor. On any road where you can safely do so, pick a fixed reference point, watch the vehicle ahead pass it, and count 1/1000 to 1,000. Your front bumper should not reach that point before you finish the count. If it does, you need more distance. Do this intentionally for the next day or two on local roads until the habit is established, and then carry it onto the corridor. The difference between a 1-second following gap and a 2-second following gap at highway speed feels larger to maintain than it sounds in description, because maintaining it requires actively resisting the pressure from surrounding traffic to close up. Maintain it anyway. It is both the legally required gap in designated segments and the gap that research consistently shows produces dramatically better emergency braking outcomes. The fourth action is about your phone. Put it somewhere that you cannot access it while driving on this corridor, and establish that as a firm rule before you leave home tomorrow. The distracted driving detection cameras at 23 interchange locations are not forgiving of the brief glance, the quick text at what seems like a safe moment, or the call you take without the speakerphone being mounted, because it is only going to be a minute. The camera captures the image is reviewed, the violation is issued. The fine starts at $150 and goes up from there, depending on the state. No phone interaction during any drive on this corridor is the only policy that guarantees you avoid this category of violation entirely. The fifth action is to verify your insurance information in your state's database. Call your insurance company or log into your carrier's online customer portal and confirm that your current policy is showing as active in your state's motor vehicle information system. In states that use electronic insurance verification, there can be lag periods between when a policy renews or is updated and when that updated status is reflected in the state database. If the automated plate reading system cross-references your registration against the database and your insurance is not showing as currently active, you may receive a flag even if you are covered under a valid policy. Getting that information confirmed and current before you drive takes one phone call or one login to your insurance portal and eliminates a category of flag that has nothing to do with your actual driving behavior. The sixth action is to check your transponder account if you use an E-ZPass or equivalent electronic toll collection transponder for I-95 toll segments. Several states along the corridor have integrated the new enforcement infrastructure with existing toll collection systems in ways that mean a transponder account with a zero balance, outdated payment information, or account flags from unpaid tolls may generate additional alerts when your plate passes through gantry points. Log into your transponder account, verify that your balance is sufficient, confirm that your payment information is current, and resolve any outstanding account issues before tomorrow. A toll account in good standing is one less variable in a system that is now checking more data points per plate read than ever before. The seventh action is one that applies specifically to drivers who have received any prior violation notices on this corridor that they have not yet resolved. The new automated enforcement infrastructure does not only check whether your current registration is valid, it also checks whether your registration has outstanding holds associated with it, which in many states includes unresolved violation notices and unpaid fines. If you have outstanding I-95 violations from prior months or years that have not been paid or formally contested, those outstanding items may cause your plate to generate an additional flag under the new system, even if your current registration status is otherwise clean. Contact your state DMV and any relevant courts or administrative agencies to understand the current status of any unresolved violations on your record and to address them before you drive on this corridor. I want to make sure I spend a moment on the geographic reality of this enforcement expansion, because the specific segments of I-95 where the most consequential new enforcement provisions are active are the segments that the highest volume of daily commuters travel through. And knowing which segments have which level of enforcement intensity matters for planning your drive tomorrow. The high-density traffic area designation, which carries the tighter 3 miles per hour speed threshold and the mandatory 2-second following distance enforcement, applies to all I-95 segments within 10 to 15 miles of the following metropolitan interchange clusters. In Massachusetts, the segments approaching and departing the I-93 junction in the Boston metropolitan area. In Rhode Island, the segments around the Providence interchange complex. In Connecticut, the segments around the New Haven and Bridgeport corridor interchanges. In New York, the entire Bronx and Lower Westchester segments, which carry some of the highest traffic volumes of any interstate segment in the country. In New Jersey, the segments approaching the George Washington Bridge access and the interchange 6 to 9 complex in central New Jersey. In Delaware, the approaches to the I-295 junction near Wilmington. In Maryland, the entire Baltimore Beltway connection segment. In Virginia, the entire Northern Virginia segment from the D.C. area through the I-495 interchange zone. In North Carolina, the Charlotte metro approaches. And in Florida, the entire Miami-Dade and Broward County segments, which routinely rank among the most congested and most crash-intensive segments of the entire corridor. If you drive in any of these areas, you are in high-density enforcement territory. The 3 miles per hour speed threshold and the 2-second following distance requirement apply. Plan accordingly. I also want to address something directly that some of you may be thinking as you process all of this information. And that is the question of how you handle a violation notice if you receive one and believe it to be an error. The automated systems being deployed on I-95 include human review steps for certain violation categories, particularly distracted driving and HOV violations where image analysis is involved. But speed violations and registration flag violations are processed with a higher degree of automation and a lower level of individual human review. If you receive a violation notice and you believe the violation was incorrectly recorded, you have the right to contest it. The process for contesting automated enforcement violations varies by state, but generally involves requesting a review through the administrative agency that issued the notice, which will be identified on the notice itself, along with the deadline for requesting review. Do not ignore a violation notice, even if you believe it is incorrect. Ignoring it does not make it go away. In most states, an uncontested automated enforcement notice becomes a final order after a defined period, and an uncontested final order can result in registration holds, additional fines, and in some states, referral to a collections agency. If you receive a notice, read it carefully, understand the deadline for contesting it, and either pay it within the payment deadline or initiate a formal contest within the contest deadline. Do not let the deadline pass without taking one of those 2 actions. I also want to make sure every driver on this corridor is aware of the scam that has already emerged in connection with these new enforcement rule announcements, because it is already circulating, and it is specifically designed to take advantage of the confusion that new rules create. Fraudulent text messages and emails are being sent to drivers claiming to be official notices from state transportation departments, from a fictional federal interstate enforcement compliance office, or from the I-95 Corridor Authority, claiming that the recipient's license plate has been flagged under the new enforcement framework and demanding immediate online payment through a link in the message to avoid escalating penalties. Every single one of these messages is a fraudulent scam. Legitimate violation notices from state and federal highway enforcement agencies under this framework are delivered by United States Postal Service mail to the registered address of the vehicle owner on file with the DMV. They are not delivered by text message. They are not delivered by email containing a payment link. They are not accompanied by demands for immediate payment within hours. If you receive any text or email claiming you owe money related to I-95 enforcement and asking you to click a link to pay, do not click the link. Do not provide any payment information through any channel suggested in that message. Forward the message to 7726 if it arrived as a text, or report it at reportfraud.ftc.gov if it arrived as an email. Then delete it. If you have any genuine question about whether a violation notice is legitimate, call your state DMV using the number on the official state website, not a number provided in any message you received. The scammers behind these fraudulent messages are counting specifically on the confusion created by the launch of new enforcement rules to rush people into making payments before they stop to verify the source. Do not let that happen to you or to anyone you share the road with. Let me close with the broader perspective that every regular I-95 driver and every American highway driver needs to understand about why this moment matters beyond the specific rules going into effect tomorrow. The automated enforcement infrastructure being activated on I-95 starting tomorrow is not the end point of this process. It is the prototype. The federal and multi-state coordinated framework that has been designed, tested, and is now being fully deployed on I-95 is explicitly intended to serve as the model for what will become a national interstate highway enforcement system. The same technology platform, the same gantry-mounted sensor arrays, the same plate recognition and real-time database cross-referencing, the same automated violation generation system, is being evaluated for deployment on I-10, I-80, I-75, I-40, I-70, and every other major interstate corridor in the country, as federal and state transportation safety budgets are allocated over the coming years. What is new and unfamiliar about driving on I-95 tomorrow is going to be the standard experience of driving on any major American interstate within a decade. Every speed threshold, every following distance standard, every expired registration flag, every handheld device detection camera is going to be part of the driving environment everywhere, not just on this corridor. The driving habits that were never reliably enforced because they required a human officer to be in the right place at the right moment. The 7 miles over, the 1-second tailgate, the expired registration nobody ever caught, the phone you held for 30 seconds because you thought you were not near a cop. All of that is being systematically closed off. Not as a revenue exercise, though the fines are real, but as a genuine response to a highway safety record that has cost thousands of lives on this corridor alone. If this information helped you understand what is changing tomorrow and prepared you to drive on this corridor without a violation notice appearing in your mailbox 2 weeks from now, share this video with every driver in your life. Put it in your group chats. Send it to your family members who commute on any segment of this corridor. Post it for your network, because the fine cycle on several of these provisions begins tonight at midnight in certain jurisdictions. And every driver who does not know what changed is a driver who is going to learn about it the hard way. Drive safe, know the rules, and take the actions we talked about today before you get behind the wheel tomorrow.